This is how I found healing for a broken relationship with my dad. I'll start back when I was a kid. When I was little, my dad was my hero and my best friend. When my parents divorced when I was 12, he started a new family. His wife had 4 little kids at the time, and we didn't have any contact for years. And years later, like 5 years later, I made contact with him and we started a relationship again. We would get together and play cribbage and talk about work and the weather, and that's about as deep as it would get. About 6 years ago, God freed me from anxiety, depression, and alcohol addiction. And I started following Jesus as close as I could and battling the sin in my life. And since then, he's asked me to take several steps of faith. And one of the first ones and most uncomfortable ones was to forgive my dad. And I was about 40 years old at the time, and I thought I had already done that. I thought I did that when I was 17. Started at a church service. The pastor was talking about forgiveness, and he said if you can think back to something in your past and still feel something from it, it means it's not healed and that you have resentment. And I thought back to my past, and I could definitely feel something from it. So I prayed and asked God, what do you want me to do? And I heard back immediately, forgive your dad. And I wasn't sure how to do that. So I asked for help. I woke up one night sweating with this feeling like I just needed to go talk to my dad. And I had to bring up things from the past that we'd avoided talking about all those years. And I needed help doing it. So I called my dad and asked him if I could come over. And he lived about 2 hours away from me. So the whole way to his house, I'm going through these scenarios in my head of what I'd say, what he'd say. He'd get mad and yell at me and throw me out of his house, and that would be it. And all the scenarios ended the same way. So when I got there, we played cribbage, and we talked about work, and we talked about the weather, and we talked about my kids. And then he said he had stuff to do to get ready for, and I said okay, and I got ready to leave, and I almost did. But I just felt like I had to do this. And so I asked him if we could go for a drive. And I didn't want to talk to him and look him right in the eye across the table, so I thought that would be more comfortable. So we got in the car, and I just started talking. I started bringing up all the stuff from when I was a kid, how I got beat up when I was in school and I didn't have anyone to talk to, and I really needed him and he wasn't there. And the thing was, he didn't get mad, he didn't yell. None of the scenarios that I had went over, none of that happened. He said he was sorry. He said he really wished he could have done it differently. He wished he could do it over again. He knew he really hurt me, and he was really sorry, and I really forgave him. I forgave him from my heart. And he needed that just as bad as I did. It was like both of us took off backpacks full of rocks that we'd been carrying around that day. And our relationship was different after that. I left his house, and I thank God all the way home. When we talked after that, we had meaningful conversations. We talked about stuff that mattered. It wasn't talking about work and the weather anymore. We talked about that too, but we had deep, meaningful conversation. We had a real relationship after that. And it wasn't long after that he passed away. He was a smoker, and he only had one lung. He smoked on the other one for years, but it was still out of the blue. It was a sudden thing. I had just talked to him a few days before that, and everything seemed fine. And he passed away sitting at his kitchen table with his Bible in front of him, and his finger was in his coffee cup handle, and just fell asleep. And a couple weeks before he died, I had this feeling like I needed to tell him that it was an honor to be his son. And so I called him and I said, you know, he had helped a lot of people in his time. Since going into AA 35 years before that, he had helped many people with alcohol addiction and breaking free from it. And it just felt like I needed to tell him that. So I told him it was an honor to be his son, and I thanked him for helping all those people. And that's the only time I've ever heard him get choked up. He actually got choked up while he was talking to me on the phone. And, you know, sometimes I think if I wouldn't have gone through with it that day, if I would have listened to my gut and not what God was telling me to do, and he would have passed away, I would have missed out on that relationship with him. And I am so glad, no matter how uncomfortable and scary it was well worth it. And I actually learned a lot about my dad after that. I learned about how horrible his childhood was. He went through tragedy after tragedy, and his dad treated him horribly. He was a way better dad to me than his dad was to him. And I really hope this helps somebody in healing a broken relationship that you have. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.